Women who dated older men as teenagers that now realize they were predators. What's your story? I was 15 and definitely didn't understand a thing about love or danger. I found out that he was married and had a child because he literally disappeared and I was trying to find out what happened. OMG, that's crazy. I'm sorry you got preyed on like that. I'll put my experience in here while I'm at it. I was 14. He was 21 and I thought it was cool that he had a car and could buy alcohol. Luckily I didn't interact with this person for more than a few months. I was 15 with a 21-year-old. He hung around youth group and made all us younger girls feel special with his attention. I was shy and quiet, didn't stand out much, but obviously wanted the special attention that all the prettier, peppier girls got. He wasn't interested until he found out my mom worked nights and I was home alone. We ended up getting into a pretty heated argument and split when, 2 weeks in, I still hadn't let him come over because I was terrified of what my mom would do if she knew I'd had anyone over while she was gone. Glad you stood up to him, but kudos to your mom for raising you right. My first boyfriend, I was barely 15. He was 21, worked in a local shop and all the girls at my school liked him, so came as a bit of a surprise when the biggest dork ever, me, somehow landed him and not any of the popular girls. We dated for maybe 4 months. Turned out he was sleeping with 3 girls in my year, which I found confusing because I begged him to take my virginity to no avail. Always found that really weird and insulting that he never even wanted to sleep with me. Plot twist. My mum had stormed into the shop when we first started dating and told him, "If you take my daughter's virginity, I will kill you with my bare hands." God bless my mum. I was 14 and dated a 25-year-old cop. He never asked my age and I never told. One day we're chatting on phone and I told him that I got some homework to do and I'll call back later. He said, "Freshman year of college getting to you, huh?" I said, "College? I'm in high school." Dead silence. Then he asked how old I was and I said 14. He freaked out and was saying, "I'm gonna go to jail for this and I'm gonna lose my job." He said, "I can't see you again and please don't tell anyone." I said, "Yeah, of course." I got why he was scared and I never saw him again and never told. I was 15 and met a 30-year-old who was an older brother of a boy I met in group therapy. He used to tell me how complicated and mature I was. LOL, so cliche. I'm now 24 and seeing or interacting with anyone who is 15 makes me sick. I felt so old then, but it's insane now how obvious to me that people that age are children. I feel the same way. I'm in shock whenever I see a 16-year-old because they're just so young. I'm 32 now, same age as the man that took advantage of me. I met a dude on Adult Swim's forums back when I was around 12. He was 24 and was nice to me. Things always seemed hinky to me even from the beginning, but I had no friends in real life and was definitely in an ugly duckling place, so I figured that if this is who is going to pay attention to me, so be it. He would tell me the things he wanted to do to me and eventually sent me a hideously low-res picture of his dong, and all I remember is trying to laugh it off and said I thought he sent me a picture of a sock. Eventually, he started asking that if we met in person if he could tie me up and take nudes of me. He started talking about buying a plane ticket to visit me and for my address, and I guess I finally had a bad enough gut feeling and didn't go through with it. My family eventually found out about us talking and it was a huge deal. I was rightfully banned from the internet for a while. Not that it mattered much, because I wound up meeting another awful dude older than me, but this one was locally grown, LOL. Jesus Christ, this same exact thing happened to me. The way my parents found out was because he ordered me a freaking Hollister hoodie and mailed it to my house. I gave him my address. He was 33 and I was 12. I don't know why. I don't remember watching anything or being around anyone that would influence me to do this, but I used to, at the age of 12-14, send nude pictures of myself to older men. I would go on chat sites and offer up these pictures of myself. I never met up with any of the people I sent pictures to, and I still, to this day, don't know why I did it. To this day I think about older men taking advantage of me and I don't know why I always go to that place. I don't think I was abused. If I was, I don't remember it. I was 17 and having a relationship with my 45-year-old teacher whilst I was in school. My dad was dying of terminal cancer and I needed someone to lean on. The police found out, but I didn't want to disclose any details. Watching my dad die was enough trauma, let alone having a full-on police investigation. He is no longer allowed to teach, but never was prosecuted. I tried to go for counseling, but they said they would have to inform the police of whatever I said. So I've been trying to deal with it by myself. He hit me and sent me death threats and I never reported him. So, I posted this in a thread called Redditors that have called off their wedding. Why? I called off my wedding 3 months before it happened. Why? I was a 17-year-old. I'd have been 18 at the time of the wedding. About to marry a 26-year-old man that had been dating me for 3 years. I was a victim about to marry her abuser. The engagement ring, which I did eventually find out was fake. He has money, lots of it, but that didn't matter to me, was to buy my consent silence whatever as he stuck his dong in everything that moved. He was an alcoholic, a narcissist, a pedophile. Seriously, I wasn't a 14-year-old that looked like an 18-year-old. I was a 14-year-old that looked like a 12-year-old. I loved him because I thought he was saving me from my horrid situation with my family. My mom and I moved in with her boyfriend, only to find out too late that he was an abuser. He'd take me away from it, even if it was just for a little while. I was so messed up. I ended up living in a boarding house when things finally broke in my abusive household because, of course, I was 17 and he didn't want me to move in until I turned 18. His career depended on a squeaky clean image. I ended up pregnant, having a violent end to my pregnancy that resulted in my daughter's stillbirth. Despite this all, I loved him, but he started picking at my appearance. I was gaining too much weight even though I was at a healthy weight for my age height. I had gotten hips and breasts, so we talked about dieting. I stopped eating. I drank water when I'd get hungry. Everything had to be low fat, no fat, low calorie, no calorie, and sugar free. It worked. I went from healthy to underweight. What made me realize that I wanted out was a box of chicken wings. I ended up moving back in with my mother after she was able to escape her ex. We lived near an indoor flea market farmers market that had the most amazing food vendors. I love food, and this diet was killing me. I was freaking miserable. So, I decided to have a cheat day, and I went and ordered a box of hot wings from the chicken place in the farmers market. As I sat down with my favorite movie, eating my favorite food, I realized that the extreme dieting would always be my life. I also realized that he wanting me to be so unhealthy wasn't right. I was tired all the time, cold all the time, hungry all the time. I decided, while happily munching on that box of wings, I was done. I called him, told him that I was done. It took me another 3 years to truly be done, but the very expensive wedding was done and over. He never got any deposits back. It took me almost a decade to realize that he wanted me to look like a 14-year-old forever. I was also always dismissive about the age difference, citing that I was mature for my age. I now realize it didn't matter. I was a child. I'm so sorry that happened to you, and so happy and proud you got out. Not a woman, but when I was under 18, I think I was 16, I joined a guild on WoW and the guild leader groomed and pressured me into sending him nudes and being naked on webcam. When his GF found out, she told the entire guild that I was a home wrecker. I really thought the guy cared about me, but he joined in and said I was desperate and it was sad that I was so into him. He blocked me and ruined my reputation on that server. He was in the army and I think 28. Pretty sure those pictures got passed around, and it is absolutely vile that these 30+ grown adult men were distributing child P of me and laughing about it. I blamed myself for the longest time, but telling my story to horrified faces kinda made me realize how fricked up it was. I was 16 dating my 23-year-old supervisor from work at a fast food restaurant. It started like the normal story. I thought I was mature. He made me feel special, etc., and it was fine for a few months. He seemed sensitive. He had been engaged and had his heart broken before, and it seemed genuinely pretty sweet. We would stay after work talking and I'd try to sneak over to his apartment when I could. After maybe 6 months of dating, the owners of the restaurant found out and fired him. They didn't fire him for that, but found another excuse to get rid of him pretty quickly. After that, he couldn't find another job and I felt responsible. I gave him a couple $100 a few times to help him make his rent, but after another few months, He had to move in with his dad. At this point, I started college. I went early, and he was living about an hour away from me. My parents didn't want me to see him when I still lived at home, so we spent a little more time together once I was at school. He still wasn't working and was pretty unhappy overall. He always talked about how much he loved me and wanted to get married, but I knew all along I didn't want to. I just felt so guilty leaving him. After we'd been dating for over a year, he moved several states away to live with his brother and try to get his life together. He got him a job and everything was going pretty well. We were doing long distance, and he kept trying to convince me to transfer schools out there. After a month or two of him being gone, I finally got the courage to break up with him. He became very depressed and even suicidal. He came back to visit and I saw him twice. Both times, I had to stop him from doing something harmful to himself. I always reached out to his family or friends to make sure they knew what was going on, but eventually I cut off all contact. I looked him up a few years ago. He's married, has 2 kids, and is apparently a pastor or youth pastor. Well, we didn't really date. I was 8, in Mexico with family. Not the fancy resort Mexico. The rundown, cobblestone street. Horses are the main transportation type of town. I was looking for my sister who had gone to a corner store with a cousin. There were multiple, so I was screwed. See, she was the type to go to at least 3 and then at the final one, pick her items and go back home. I took off. I went to the farthest one and would just loop back. No biggie. I was walking on the street, and a car pulls up from behind me. He stops and rolls down his window and asks me to come to the car. I do, and he asks where the nearest school is. I tell him it's down the street we're on and then a right about 5 blocks down. Keep going straight. You'll see it. He said thank you. I said of course and went to walk away, but he said wait and opened his door. He told me to come around, because he essentially had me pinned to a small chain link fence. I got around the door, as if I were to get in, and he had his pants and underwear down, length in hand. He asked if I had ever seen one. I shook my head, not knowing what to say. He told me to hold it like he did. I was too scared to say no, so I did. He then showed me how to move my hand and let me do it. He eventually released and he cleaned my hand off. He said I should get in. He'd give me a ride to the store. A guy on a bicycle came and started yelling at the guy in the truck. He was saying not to touch his sister ever again or he'd cut his hand off, and he walked me down the street and around the corner and sat with me while I broke down. He said he was sorry and didn't know what else to do. He saw it happen from up the street and rode his bike as fast he could. Eventually I gathered my composure, gave him some money for a beer, and ran home. I think about it now. I could have been taken and never heard from or seen again. I thank that guy every day. I have never told anyone this but wanted it off my chest. I'm so glad you're okay. My cousin in GA got with a guy when she was around 13 and he was around 26. She had 3 kids with him. He slept around with anyone who was willing, including his first cousin, her mom, my aunt, and her sister. He took advantage of her and fricked her self-esteem so much that she always takes him back. Her 3 kids now all have kids too. She is raising most of her grandkids. I feel sorry for all of them. Some parts of Georgia are like a third world country. From a small town in Georgia, can confirm. I was 14. He was 21. He knew me long before we dated though. Since I was 12 he spent lots of time making me feel older than I was and listening to my problems and comforting me. He constantly joked about dating me or my friends, and we always laughed about how he would end up in jail one day. I thought it was a joke, at least until I became really sad, and I sought out some comfort from him. He took advantage of that and it escalated really quickly. He guilted me into sending him pictures every day while we dated, and it wasn't until it was too late that I realized what was happening. I recently got back chat logs from that conversations I had with him, and I had to stop reading it because now that I'm older I can see every freaking tactic he used to manipulate me for all those years. It hurts. I didn't even start to think about it as grooming until I heard he dated another friend of mine, and even though I felt protective of her, it was only a year later that I thought of him as a predator and realized that we were not the only ones, and that there were even younger girls. Just wanted to remind you that it's not your fault. You shouldn't feel ashamed for being manipulated. I was 13 and my parents had a friend who was 24 that started hanging around the house a lot. I developed a big crush on him and ended up losing my virginity to him. I thought we were in love and going to get married. My parents found out and I never saw him again. Didn't realize how creepy it was until I had my own kids. I dated an older woman when I was a teen. She was in her mid-20s. I was still a minor. When we broke up, she told me she'd been stopping her friends from coming after me, but now she wasn't going to stop them anymore. She proceeded to make my life heck, and even faked her own death to make me look bad. She stalked me online for a while after that. I don't know if she still is, but I can't deny the possibility. I don't feel safe. Don't know if I ever will. All I can say is that I am floored by how many horrible tales of abuse are in this thread, all the same story each time. I'm kinda in a weird space right now, realizing this happened to me. Welp, another story to add to the list. No wonder my dad went to the police. I thought it was my parents' usual overreaction. I know this will get buried, but I'd like to tell my story anyway. I was 18 and started dating my 34-year-old co-worker, Tom. I don't know why I even liked him, but for some reason I was drawn to him. He was charming, good looking, always willing to help people, talented, smart. When I was first getting to know him, he acted perfect in every way. No matter how hard I tried, I could never find any flaws in him. I had a rough upbringing with an absent biological father and a mom and stepfather who treated me like garbage most days. Tom always knew how to help me forget about my crappy home life and make me feel like $1,000,000. He would buy me gifts, tell me how special I was, take me out to nice dinners. To a naive 18-year-old, he was just a sweet guy with good intentions. Fast forward a few months and I realized how wrong I was. Tom and I had begun to secretly date behind my parents' back because I knew they wouldn't approve. After about a month of being together, they discovered our relationship and kicked me out, forbidding me to see him. Well, lo and behold, I ended up moving into Tom's place because I had nowhere else to go. The second we lived together and he knew I didn't have a way out, that's when he started abusing me. It was never physical abuse, was always verbal and emotional. Honestly, I think I would have preferred physical abuse. It would have hurt less. The abuse ranged from belittling me and telling me I was worthless to killing my dog in front of me simply because he felt like it. He would tell me I was useless, lazy, and stupid. Would tell me that the reason my biological dad abandoned me was because I was an incompetent piece of crap who will never amount to anything. He would tell me my family didn't love me and that I should just kill myself because no one actually gave a crap about me anyway. Sometimes when he was in a particularly bad mood, he would take my sentimental belongings and break them in front of me and then laugh at me when I cried. I put up with this crap for 2 whole years, and the entire 2 years I wished I was dead. I had no friends, no family I could fall back on. He had completely beaten me into the ground to the point where I believed everything he said. Eventually I gathered the courage to leave, but it took a lot and took way too long. I'm 25 now and engaged to a wonderful man who treats me the way I know I deserve. I still have residual issues from Tom that I am trying to work through. I have good days and bad days. To any young girls reading this, please remember that you are worth so much more than you think. Don't date any guy who gives you the time of day, especially if he's significantly older than you. The chances are, he is an abuser who is looking for an easy victim. Stay strong and stay smart. Don't be like me. My best friend in high school dated a teacher and the school found out somehow. I don't know if she thinks of it like this though. I for sure do. LOL, I was friends with a girl in high school that married a teacher as soon as we graduated. As far as I know, nobody cared. He also left his wife and newborn to be with her. Zero consequences. I had actually turned 20 a few days before, so technically not a teenager, but I married him when I was 22 and he was 38 despite every red flag and every person who begged me not to because I was a stupid kid and thought I knew everything. I've been trapped in an abusive marriage ever since, and I'm 39 now. Thing is, I didn't realize it was abusive until about 5 years ago and now I'm well and truly trapped. Please, young women who date older dudes, listen to people's concerns. They care about you. They're trying to help. And if you need an ear, my inbox and life experience are open to you. I will try to help. I'm 18. He's 31. I was supposed to meet him tomorrow. My country has finished quarantine. I told him I didn't feel comfortable sleeping with him, or even hooking up in any way. He pressed me on it further, and I admitted I was on my period and was uncomfortable. He told me that he didn't want to be around anybody who put up any barriers. He didn't want me to feel comfortable setting boundaries. Blocked his butt real fast. He told me that he didn't want to be around anybody who put up any barriers. Exactly the right moment to note the frick out of there. Good on you for recognizing the red flag for precisely what it was. When I was 17, I was befriended by a guy almost 17 years older than me. We were friends for 2 years and he pursued me relentlessly. I never fancied him, but we did become really close and I cared a lot about him. I had a really hard time when I was younger and tried to commit suicide at 17, so when he promised me unconditional love, which I had never had, and showed me all this attention, he eventually wore me down. He made a move when I was 19 and I didn't say no. We were together for 2.5 years. I can't say he was a predator exactly, but when I reached my late 30s, the thought of being with a teenager actually made me want to vomit. A change of perspective was a real eye-opener, as I had always explained that I was more mature than he was, so the age gap didn't seem that big. But when you're 17, your opinion of time is so different to 20 years later. Pursued me relentlessly. Sounds pretty predatory to me. My parents found out and threatened to have him arrested if he ever contacted me again. I was 13 years old and he was 21 at the time. At the time I was truly in love with him and tried to initiate contact with him after the fact. He wouldn't talk to me. I was super pissed at my parents at first, but looking back now I am truly glad my parents got me out of that situation. Thankfully we never went further than kissing and slight fingering, which is absolutely disgusting looking back, but I'm glad I wasn't penetrated. The guy was mentally unstable. ETA. I just realized how fricked up my childhood actually was. I had just turned 18. He was 26. He flew across half the world to see me. I didn't want him to. Guilted me into being with him. When I told my mum, I felt uncomfortable being pressured. She too guilted me about him coming so far for me. Overall super fricked up. But the most disturbing thing is how pressed he was on getting married. This man really wanted us to tie the knot, have babies. Straight away, I had to remind him I hadn't even finished high school yet. That didn't bother him the slightest bit. He was dead set on us getting married, moving to his country and having a family ASAP. Looking back, I can see that what he really wanted was to completely isolate me from everything and everyone I know. Worth mentioning, he was somewhat racist towards my people and wasn't big on the idea of coming back to my country, and seal the deal of me being 100% dependent on him by bringing some babies into the picture. And you know what? It felt so much like everyone felt that's what I should do, that I nearly went through with it. I shudder at the thought of what could have been. Oh my god, nuke dodged. I'm glad you're free of him, friend. My mom was 17 and my dad was 26 when they got married. They were divorced before I was 2, and it was a beer marriage. My dad loved his beer, and my mom loved, well, his best friend. I think I'm a bad person for chuckling at this. Oh crap. Here's my time to shine a light on how fricked up predators are. Backstory. I'm from a town of 400. I liked books. Never took gun safety or snowmobile classes. Was super sick as a kid and couldn't be in sports. And didn't get along with my classmates. So when Facebook first started, lots of groups were out there. Older men, younger women, blah blah. So me, finding men like Pierce Brosnan and George Clooney more attractive than Channing Tatum, turned to these groups. I had men messaging me all over the place. A high school shop teacher, a retired truck driver, a media personality, a principal, and so on. And I was a frisky kid, read Harlequin romances since I was 12. Like I was desperate to feel the passion that happened in between the lines of these books. So there I was, 16, and had men fawning over me. I'd talk dirty with them and we'd share pictures and talk about they'd come and we'd make love. All that BS. For 4 years I dated the retired truck driver. He lived hours away, so we never met until I was a freshman in college. I mean, the man was gross, married, and had me combed into being wrapped around his fat cigarette-scented finger. We holed ourselves up in a crap hotel when I should have been partying and going to classes and learning what a hangover was, not rolling around in bed trying to get a 68-year-old hard because he had low testosterone. 4 years he had me so convinced he was my only love I'd ever have, and that when I graduated I'd drive to his home, turning my back on everyone and everything I'd ever known. And when I would want to hang out with friends he'd say I was a S and I was fricking all the guys. I wasn't, was literally hanging out with friends. So a few months before graduation I came to my senses and realized how fricked up it was. I did hook up with a guy who was my age and I ended up dating for a few years, but had savior complex because he knew my original plans. But anyway, retired trucker gets the email because he didn't know how to text and only had Facebook, that I'm done and how fricked up it was that he was doing that. He wrote me begging me to come back and how I was just mad he wouldn't be at graduation. I told him no again and said that would be it. That sucker mailed letters typed out on an old butt computer about how I should enjoy my last night on my knees and how I was going to bleed when he got a hold of me. I was so scared I couldn't tell anyone, not even savior complex. So I went to the police station and told the cop my story. He said an international restraining order is hard to get but he'd call the guy and try to scare him off. Won't lie, I was a little heartbroken when I heard how sad he was, but come on, guy was almost 70 and I wasn't 20. He never contacted me again and I actually found his obit a few months ago. I have way more stories of small stuff with him and other guys. If you want, just ask. I was a lonely, bald 12-year-old who wanted attention. A 40-year-old dad with a son convinced me on the internet to send him nudes, and he sent me photos of him masturbating. He made me feel cared for and listened to, and it makes me ashamed to this day how much I trusted a man I never met. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.